Welcome back everybody to KSP Interstellar Quest, a series in which we pay tribute to Scott Manley's epic series. We do this in Promised Worlds, the worlds of KSP2 that we never got. And this is already our 6th episode. And we are looking at a new launch vehicle, not a new launch vehicle, a new lander or spacecraft, the Segan B series. You've seen the Segan A series in the past. You see it coupled together with the Diet return capsule. But as we remarked in the last couple of episodes, that the Diet is really underpowered for the type of mission that we're doing. So you're looking at a new kind of capsule. This is a 1.85 meter capsule. And it's a direct ascent stage. So we're no longer doing the Apollo-style lunar rendezvous kind of a mission architecture. But we're doing actually something that was proposed back in the 60s. But it would have required an insanely big rocket. And because our moon has a much stronger gravity than gravitational pull than the Mun does. And so we get away with actually doing this for almost the same cost. We can launch it at the same launch vehicle, not something that has twice the power. And on board we have Jebediah Kerbin, our resident test pilot, and Teeman Kerbin, our new scientist. And of course they use the ScanSat satellite that we launched in the last episodes to get some really detailed data on the Mun. And we're trying to find these hotspots that have science that we haven't visited yet, but also have large deposits of ore and large deposits of helium-3. And helium-3 we are now getting better data from our satellites, so we may have a better input on where larger quantities are. And we're descending and we're using the kind of Chinese slash Russian Soviet style of landing, where we should have discarded the descent stage prior to actually landing, but Jeb has his own way of getting rid of it. It works, kind of, but I would have preferred braking slightly earlier. So I think I miscalculated a little bit here. Trying to avoid the big rocks. We don't want to do a Mall of Mankind kind of lunar landing where the Apollo 11 craft hit a big rock and tipped almost over. But yeah, here we are. And Jab is first to leave the craft and do some exploring, get his footprints on the Mun, plant his flag, and he's followed by Taemin, our new scientist, new to the space program. And in your first flight you go directly to space, but not just to space, you go all the way to the Mun. I think those are exciting times. Jab raises his visor and plants the flag for the second moon landing. And yeah, their mission is to scout out a potential base and to figure out if we can find good grounds, or maybe how do we call that, like a surface area that's relatively flat. You can see the lander is being, Jeb twists the lander around. That's because he needs access to the landing bay and the docking bay, because they brought a rover with them. This is a small Segan rover, which is docked internally. Well, we're going to leave it at the Mun, but it's docked internally, and you can see me struggle to get it out because this was a very snug fit. And we have to, fortunately it has some of a reaction wheel, so we can wiggle it around and actually prevent it from falling over. I had to do that 3 times. The two of them can board the rover together and they can drive around. I've tested this on Kerbin. I had not tested it on the Mun. And of course we have lower gravity and different friction parameters. So it's trying to figure out how to do this. It slides a little bit to the left, and we picked a terrain where parallax went all out and created so many rocks and stones that we found it's really hard to get past this. But at some point we do make it past the bigger boulders and we can make some decent speed and travel a fair amount of terrain. I think we visited 2 additional biomes on this mission, though I think we all got seasick while driving, because the rover tends to slide to the right. We did bring some additional science instruments that we could use to pick up a ton of additional science. We could have done also better on the thrust-to-weight ratio on the descent stage of the lander. I think we need a minor redesign, or just better piloting. But that's part of why Jeb's here. He is the best pilot we have. And he's there to test out this craft. We're still doing rather small or short duration missions. These are maybe 1 Kerbin day of mission value. The next mission is going to be a longer day. We're going to do a 3-day mission. But still, we're taking to the sunlight. We haven't really unlocked nuclear power yet or vast batteries that we would need to stay the night and keep ourselves warm. So we're still trying to figure out what the best architecture is, what the best craft is. And the Segan B seems to do well. I'm not sure if I'm too happy with this kind of architecture where you dump the descent stage, but it does allow you to bring a ton of equipment to the Mun and give you about 1,000 meters per second to get back up. And also the internals of the craft are really nice. So they make their way back to planet Kerbin and get ready for a fiery descent. And we try to burn off all the excess fuel to get our periapsis a little bit lower. And here we go. And as we descend, we notice we get a pop-up from the science monitor that there is some science to be gained in the upper atmosphere. And being the daredevil that he is, Jab jumps outside, does the EVA report while entering the atmosphere, and then quickly re-enters the spacecraft before actually jettisoning the spare module. Now I installed this mod science ! Which allows you to get alerts when there's fresh science to be got. And that actually is super handy. You can also just get it by clicking a button, but yeah, sometimes it's nice to also actually do the EVA and do it in the proper way. Regardless, we are on our way back, blowing up the parachutes. I have double parachutes on this craft, which I probably should have hotkeyed somewhere. But yeah. We made it back. The pod did bounce a lot on the water, so I had to look into the craft files to see if I can change the buoyancy a bit. Alright, so we figured out how to do this, and we're launching Surveyor A1. And Surveyor A1 is a very interesting craft and an interesting rocket. You're looking at the Atlas rocket, and the Atlas rocket is, well, it's an expensive rocket. Well, compared to all the other rockets. I think it's about 50,000, 60,000 funds. It's our first 2.5 meter rocket. And like the other one was the Vulcan is a 1.875 meter rocket, and it's not that expensive, so it's quite affordable, even with the 2 side boosters. But where the Vulcan can put about 12 tons into low Kerbin orbit, the Atlas without any assistance can already push at least 20 tons to orbit, and I think we tested it with something like 30. And it's revealing its payload. Surveyor 1 is not the lander that the Americans did. No, Surveyor 1 is a pressurized rover, much like JAXA has designed it for the Artemis missions. So JAXA and Toyota designed a pressurized rover, which is going to be super awesome. But as with this particular craft, you have to figure out how to get it to the Mun. And since our new craft is so incredible powerful, we're not actually using the second stage. We keep it attached, bring it to the Mun, it does the transfer, the insertion, and the majority of the descent burn. So, and even then we had plenty of fuel left. So it's very much overpowered, but we're going to need the size, and especially the size of the fairing, which you will see in the next episode why we really need it. The Surveyor itself also has its own descent and power system, but it only brings, I think, a couple of 100 meters per second. So it's really relying on the Atlas to carry you all the way beyond the world and then bring you to the Mun. This is where we are. We're at a couple of 100 meters, decoupling the descent stage and giving control to the tiny docking port that is on the top of the vessel, which allows me to control it in a more precise way. And maybe there's a camera looking down on the descent stage to see if we can measure the impact and see how all the regolith is pushing up and giving us some data. This freezing part is usually where KSP decides how to calculate the fireworks. Hey, we are in the twin craters because based on our data, the twin craters is really the place to be if you want to have some helium-free at least. And I don't want to have it now because I have no way of digging it up. But I do know that I want it in the future because it's one of the fuels that's powering the reactors. We're sliding down the hill, but with a bit of steering, This baby has 6 large motors, which make it really powerful. It has side docking ports, it has reaction control systems, it even has RCS, which is powerful enough to upright the craft should it tip over. It's got relay antennas, it's got all the latest science on board, it's got a geology lab, and it's got a scouting drill. So we're going to use this drill from the Wild Blue technology set to dig for core samples, bring up the core samples, and figure out what it actually is that is in the soil and what the best place there is, because there is some minor discrepancies on the quantities. And that job is going to be part of the mission crew for Segan B6, which has a rough start getting off the pad. It's wobbling all over the place, but they are away. On board are Valentina and Danamon. Danamon is our new scientist. Well, I think she went to the Kerbal Space Station once. And they're on Segan B6. Identical rocket, identical profile, and they have the mission for a longer duration stay. So they're going to stay 3 days. They're going to land directly after sundown or sunrise, and then scout the twin trainers, the twin craters, using the Surveyor craft to scan the terrain. Of course, looking for resources and for science, and there's an opportunity to actually slightly dip out of the twin craters and see if we can get to the midland craters, because there are a couple of ones nearby where we could get some additional science. And once we've picked those biomes dry, it's going to be tough to find more science. So that we have the polar caps and the far side craters, but those are going to be very different style of missions. Of course, we can do them in the same way, but we may want to do that at a later point in time and make it a little bit more spectacular. Valentina and Danamon on their way to the Mun. I'm not going to give you all the footage, because if you've seen one trajectory, you've seen them all, but every sunset is amazing to watch. The sunrises around the moon are exceptionally nice. A bit of spare fuel left in the Vulcan Heavy upper stage, but the transfer stage that you're looking at was actually capable of carrying the craft all the way from Kerbin low orbit all the way down to the Mun. So again, very much over-designed and over-engineered, but I think that's better than leaving your Kerbals stranded somewhere. So we're burning aggressively into orbit, and later we will need to do a minor plane change. And then line up for our final descent while the Earth rises over the horizon. And we picked our timing pretty good. It's a little bit off balance, so I had hoped to get there by sunrise. It's a little bit later, but I think that's okay. They'll have plenty of time to travel around, see the sights, and their main goal is to find a flat piece of land within the twin craters, and that's going to be a challenge. And we're going to need that to actually build the base. And we're not going to build the base in this episode, but we're going to sort of build the terrain for the base. So in the previous landing, you saw that the Surveyor not only had all the surveying equipment, but it also had this huge bulldozer to the front, which is a part of the Pathfinder mod. And it doesn't really work in a way that it could bulldoze Parallax, but we're going to pretend that it does. And their mission is to find a nice place that's already pretty flat and then make it really flat. And maybe build some infrastructure for our future rockets to land in a safe way. Set up some beacons, set up the terrain so we can actually get there and start building out that base infrastructure. Because if you've seen the roadmap episode, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's one of the key things that we want to do in phase 1 of our mission. And you can see we've picked our spot and we've set our target location to the Rover, of course. And we're using MacJab to align ourselves to that particular spot. And also hopefully to get a slightly softer landing, because you saw me, or Jab, let's say it was Jab, crash the descent stage in the previous landing attempt of the Segan B class. But Valentina is of course a much better pilot than Jab is. Parallax starts rendering the rocks, and I'm looking for the Rover because I can't find it. I'm sure it's there somewhere. For the people that have sharp eye, I may have spotted it on the left side of the descent stage. I hadn't found it. I was struggling to find it because it had the same colors as the rocks. I tripped off the descent stage, crashing it in, about 5 meters next to the rover. So that's a design flaw. Let's figure out if we can improve on that. Here we are. About 900 meters left, so Valentina needs to make a pretty efficient descent to get back to Kerbin. But hey, it's Valentina. And we also may want to shift one of the solar panels, because as I was gathering the science, I found that you can't really ascend or descend on the ladder if the sun is upright. But there she is, on the Mun. And for the second time. Making her way to the rover. Excellent textbook landing. Right on the dot. She should be very proud about that. And you can see the RCS on the rover. We did lose one of the monopropellant tent, which was wedged between these two wheels. For some reason, when I grab the ladder, the whole rover goes flying around, but she can use the jetpack and get on board. And there's Danone. She's going to do the same thing with a little bit too much enthusiasm. But she's heading first for the porch on the back, where all the science equipment is stored. So she can start resetting some of the experiments and collecting some of the data and put it all in this one big container. And Valentina is checking out the equipment bay, looking at the Surveyor, having a chat with Danone in the back, and then they start off driving. Driving. It's more like sliding. And that's because in KSP the wheels are not really modeled properly, and just modeled as something with friction onto surfaces. Though I do have KSP was still. This is going to be Mun Base Alpha. I'm going to show you how I built this with Kerbal Konstructs. So Kerbal Konstructs is a great mod if you want to modify the statics in the game. That is all the non-parts you build, the stuff around. And you can bring up this menu, and first we create a map decal. And we give it a name, we give it a radius, and we select the type of decal. And I think I picked a circular sloped thingy. And then select it. There you go. That's going to be the area. And this area is going to be flattened out. And we're going to tell it also to delete all parallax features, all the rocks that are actually on there. And this will allow me to create a flat surface. And you can see most of the parallax stuff is removed. And we're going to pretend that Valentina and Danone spent all their time bulldozering away that land and creating that area. And I'm trying to figure out should I make it bigger or smaller. 600 meters, 300 meters. I think 300 meters radius, that's about 600 meters. I think that's something you should be able to do. And now I'm going through all the other statics to see what we can place. And we decided we're going to create 2 blast radius shields and a couple of options for that. But on the side, I think when they're going to launch rocket pads from their base, they want to protect the rest of the base, and in particular the solar panels, from all the debris and the regolith that's going to fly everywhere. So we're going to put 2 of these there. I tried to look for roads and maybe put some roads or tire tracks on it, but I couldn't find one with a nice texture. You don't want to put grass on the Mun. So we'll pretend that there's no tire tracks, unfortunately, or maybe I'll make some statics at some point. We are driving to one of the launch site or landing sites, and Valentina is going to put a flag there in dead center. And then we can go from space, select that as a target to land on, and hopefully we should be able to land full on the dot. There we go. So there's the flag. If we land full on the dot, which I have done in the past, you will throw over the flag and you'll have to rebuild it. There might be a better way of doing it. There is actually a better way of doing it by setting up map features with Kerbal Konstructs. I have not really figured out how to do that properly. But I'll figure that out and I'll tell you in the next episode. Or if you know how to do it, then please put it in the comments. And I'll use your input for the next episode. Regardless, they start their long drive back. They are about 20 kilometers from the original landing spot. But it's been really... I've really enjoyed driving around, especially with this Rover. To be honest, I did flip over a couple of times and then righted it. But in general, most of the time you were able to find a nice track and then slide yourself through them. Sometimes there were just too many big rocks and we had to suffer through it. Like here, which was exactly where our lander was parked, so there was no opportunity other than just flying through it. It's time to go home, and one of the things you have to do is bring home all the science. Not all of the science was actually stuff we could bring home, and there were some duplicate samples in there, and then it's always nice to bring 2 of them, because then you get a high science reward. So what we did is the duplicates were put back into the lander, in the Surveyor, and then transmitted from there. And the ones that were unique and we could take home, we would put into the lander. In the bottom you can see a Ponderosa habitat, which I brought and wanted to put out there, only to realize that only engineers can move stuff around. Yeah, see, that was a bummer. They were bringing it home. We're not even able to disconnect it because I forgot to put it on a dock. I did put it on a docking port, but the docking port then got clipped into the container itself, and yeah, it's not that easy to reach. And I was afraid to decouple it whilst these two were kind of intersected, because it would probably blow up everything. Here goes the transfer stage. We're preparing for landing. I've cut up quite a bit of footage. We came in at 50 kilometers and we made 4 passes before we actually landed, which took a very, very long time. But we did get back. We landed safely in the waters of Kerbin, as you can see in a minute. We returned with more than 1,500 science. However, this spot remains very wobbly in water. And the fact that we can only bring 2 Kerbals now really starts to annoy me, especially since we have the shuttle for our space program. I think we should think of a better solution to go to the moon. But well, I think the Segan has a very nice architecture idea with this direct ascent. So we'll iterate on this design in one of the next episodes. But until then,